Awesome. Thanks, Lori.
In case anybody wants this at home after we do this.
All right.
Oh,
Hello, Shannon. All right. From Building 21. Awesome.
this is great.
Eric and Tracy, hello.
Okay, Christy.
Wonderful.
Great.
Shruta, Shara, awesome.
Australia and
From Sydney. Hey.
Australia and London, England. This is amazing.
Beautiful. Welcome, everyone. We are so glad you're here.
Yay.
Right on. Yeah, we're recording, and yes, this can absolutely, we'll make sure to share it with participants after the webinar, and then we can. Oh, Heather, yay. Awesome. Great to see you. Wonderful. I guess I should say hello. Oh, you're most welcome.
Yeah.
Lancaster, Pennsylvania. All right, team, should we jump in?
Jump us in. Let's go.
All right, let's do this. All right, Antonia, do you want to kick us off? Or am I? Oh, I'm kicking us off. That's right. Let's do this. All right, great. So we want to start just by saying a very, very warm, hi, Tyler, a very, very warm welcome to you all. We're so glad you're spending your Friday afternoon or wherever you are, whichever time zone you're in, with us. We are grateful you're making time. For those of you celebrating it, happy Good Friday to you. And we want you to know that your whole real self is welcome. A shout out to the National Equity Institute for this slide. Your kids, your pets, your roommate, your partner, your laundry, your whole real self is welcome here. And we are so delighted that you're with us. I am joined today by reDesign's co-founder and creative director, Antonia Rudenstein, and Laureen Adams. I'll just quickly introduce myself and then they can quickly say hello. But my name is Sydney Schaaf. I'm here in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, with my little family, and I am an educational designer at reDesign and also reDesign's managing director.
That's great.
Y'all want to say a quick hello? Okay.
Lori, do you want to say a little hello? I already introduced myself.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Laureen Adams. I am newer to reDesign, and I'm joining from very sunny and warm Southern California.
Awesome. All right. Cool. So we want to kick off by sharing just a little bit about reDesign. If you don't know about us, we'll just share a little bit before we jump into the opportunities. reDesign is committed to, at the core of our mission, is a commitment to meaningful, positive, and joyful learning for all young people. And our ultimate goal here is building inclusive, learner-centered communities so that education becomes a pathway to liberation. That's our mission. Learner-centered communities is what we're all about. And I invite you to check out our website. You can learn a little bit more about how we think about that. Tonight, I also want to share our 4 core values as an organization: equity, excellence, humility, and possibility. And Antonia, maybe you can speak to one. Lori, if you have interest, you could speak to one, and I'll share one that sort of resonates with me. For me in particular, as I think about this work ahead, one of these values that speaks to me is this commitment to equity. There are others who have said this much more eloquently than me, but if we are committed to disrupting systems of oppression, if we're committed to disrupting inequities, we have to examine the blueprint of what currently exists in our education system. And for us, part of that work of re-examining, pausing to examine and critique what's there and imagine what could be, part of that is looking at our content. What are we focused on, and who decided that that's what we would focus on with young people? We can't pretend that what's there is neutral. And we're committed to taking an anti-racist and multicultural stance in this work. And so that is an invitation to anyone who shares that value and that commitment. Antonia or Lori, do you want to speak to one more of these values?
I'd love to speak to humility. One of the things that's very important to everybody at reDesign is that we don't we do not believe we have the answer or that anyone has the answer. We really do see ourselves as part of a, at this point, global collective engaged in trying to make school really a great place for young people. And we don't see ourselves as leaders necessarily in this, but we would like to be able to offer and contribute the pieces of learning that we have been able to amass over the years. And so we really do come into this work that we're talking about today and all of our work as partners, as followers, and contributors.
Awesome. Thanks, Antonia. All right, we'll move us along. Antonia, do you want to share a little bit about
Yeah,
our work?
So just to give you a really quick overview, we have been a consulting practice for a long time. And in our consulting practice, we work with states, districts, and networks of schools, individual schools, and nonprofits. And we've only ever been hired through word of mouth. We work with clients usually for many years. We offer quite a few services, and we try and grow and respond to the needs of our clients. We don't have a set codified one thing that we do, and we always allow for multiple entry points. The practice that we've done as consultants has taught us a lot about what could work, what doesn't work, what conditions are needed to make things work. And we've been lucky enough this year to receive a grant that's allowing us to take what we've learned in our consulting practice and put it into a social impact initiative where we can greatly lower the barriers to entry. So consulting typically is expensive. It requires either a large district that has, pools of money, or a more wealthy community, although we've almost never worked in wealthy communities, but they can afford consultants. And because we really are about equity and access, we have been concerned with the fact that so many individuals, young people, families, individual educators have a much more challenging time accessing the expertise that consultants happen to have the luxury of time to put together. And so this new initiative, this new work that we're taking on is really about putting as much as possible out into the field at the lowest possible rates, or free, or in this instance of these 2 summer opportunities, paying people to participate. So we're really trying to turn on its head the idea that educators should be asked to do everything out of the goodness of their hearts, that they should be asked to pay for learning, they should be asked to pay for what they create. And we're really using this summer in some ways to catalyze the idea that it's really important to acknowledge, validate, and compensate educators for the work that they do. So that's where we're moving to. And we're really excited, and as Sydney said, so appreciative that you're here with us today.
Awesome. Do you want to say a little bit more, Antonia, about this?
So I'll just say one thing about this. So reDesign, we describe reDesign as an inclusive and feminist organization. And I share that with you because it's going to shape how we're planning and designing the summer initiatives. And so what we mean by that is the practices and the policies that we put together, the way we do our work, we place women at the center. And what that means is that we think about women as people who take on a lot of caretaking of elders and young people who do, the majority of chores in their households. I know that's not true of everybody, but as a gender, typically, that is how things fall out, and who are torn in lots of different directions. And so we believe that it's really important to think about building a summer with educators and with experts and professionals who are also gonna, in large part women, to really think about how to design something that works for women. And we believe if it works for women, it's going to work for everybody. And so that's where we're coming from. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as the session goes on.
Awesome. So in our time tonight with you, we're going to focus on these two core programs that we're launching, the K-12 Content Mapping. We're calling it a design studio. It's a week-long event. We're going to share the what and why of that, as well as the Designers in Residence program. And then we're going to make sure there's plenty of time for y'all to sort of ask your burning questions. We'll respond to those as best as we can. And if there's something we can't answer tonight, we'll get back to you. But we're excited to hear from you, to hear what questions you have. And of course, you know, we'd love to know how these opportunities are resonating with you. So with that, let's kick this off with a look at how these initiatives are connecting to a bigger picture roadmap, and then we'll get into the details of each of these two programs. Antonia, do you want to share about this?
Well, I'll jump right in. So we've put together our first 5 years of this social impact plan. It will go beyond that, but we have the grant is a 5-year grant, and this is what we're going to get going in this time. So this summer, we're launching 1 and 2. Number 1 is this K-12 Content Map, where we really create something that's anti-racist, that's inclusive, that really rethinks how we think about what young people should learn. We're going to bring in many more disciplines than K-12 generally allows, and we're going to really think about how to expand the possible content, concepts, big ideas that young people can explore and have access to. Part 2, we're also launching this summer. We want to create 700 different kinds of investigations over time, over years, that young people can engage in that link and tie to the content map. Ultimately there'll be K-12. We're starting with grades 7 through 12 because there's the fewest number of existing resources for that age group, but we will expand down over time. And then as I mentioned, there is a global movement. It's not organized. It is very loose, lots of people doing lots of incredible things. And in our minds, we consider this a collective. And we will be looking for ways to contribute, to offer support, to promote, to partner with other organizations and individuals who are deep in this work. We're going to open a marketplace. So as designers in residence create these investigations for young people, there's an opportunity for the best ones to go into a marketplace so that individuals, young learners, parents, community members, schools, districts can access them again for incredibly low prices. And we will do a profit sharing with any designers in residence who put things into the marketplace. And then the last piece of this is we're going to create a virtual lab school. And in that lab school it will be organized around the K-12 Content Map. It will include the investigations that get developed by the designers in residence. And it will be an opportunity in the future, not this summer, but in the future for any designers in residence, including those who start this year, to pilot things and to, if you design these explorations, to bring it and work with young people for a short period of time or a longer period of time to try out before you bring it back. You can revise it and then put it back into the marketplace. So it's a 5-year, we see these things as all interconnected. But they also can be used in, your own school, your own district in small or large ways.
Awesome. All right. Here we go.
So this is my last thing that I'm going to say, which is these are the 3 initiatives here with just the high level points. So the first thing is the K-12 content mapping. I think, quite a few of you are here to learn more about that, and you'll have questions about that. Others of you may not have known about this. So here you have just a few high-level ideas. You can find it on our website. The second option is this designers in residence. It's actually the creation of things that will bring the content map to life. There'll be 250 people involved in the content mapping, and 50 designers and residents who will move forward from there. The third piece is a very tiny step forward to being, to partnering with other organizations, which is because creating inclusive groups that really listen to everybody is very hard. And we have more experience of being harmed in those groups than in being supported. We will partner with organizations who have a really deep experience in holding space for diverse groups. They won't be leaders in content. They won't be professors. They will be people specifically trained in facilitating diverse, inclusive groups to ensure kind of intellectual and emotional safety. So that's, we haven't identified specifically who we will partner with, but it could be an organization like Visions Inc. or the National Equity Project or the Interactive Institute for Social Change. There's quite a few organizations who do this work. So we'll need to do a little bit more figuring out who has capacity to work with us. But that's the third piece, a little bit of collective partnership. So we'll talk about the first two today and not so much about the third one, but I wanted you to know that it's there and it will be part of the work.
Great. All right, Antonia, kick us off with this K-12 content mapping. What specifically, should we just open this up to questions, or do you want to share more about? Okay, great. So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so this was our big question. What if you put 10 people who love literature together to think about what's important to teach here? What if you put 10 people who adore biology together? Not just 9th grade biology teachers, but across the span of K-12 education, what is it that young people need to learn about biology or about literature or about algebra and number sense? And so that's our big question. And we think if you bring a diverse group of people together to talk about a content area they're passionate about, we can find something pretty amazing for young people to explore. So what do you want to know about this? Like what are your big questions? And you can put them in the chat. I think you have to put them in the chat, right? So, and we'll, yeah, and then we'll just, Lori will respond to some of them, just write in the chat, and we will, oh yeah, there's a Q&A. Thank you, Christine. I didn't have it open, but there's a Q&A. Maybe put it in the Q&A instead of the chat. So Lori will respond to some in real time in the chat or in the Q&A, and Sid and I will answer some of the others.
Great. Antonia, why don't you take our first question? Do we need to think about content within the typical constructs? Why these particular disciplines?
That's a great question, Liza. So fundamentally, I think there's a little bit more wrestling to do around this. That we designed it in these traditional disciplines, and we don't really believe that everything should happen in that way. So, so I would say there's probably a little bit of opening here for some further discussion, because we don't really want to recreate the silos, but we also want to make sure that the key elements of biology that really do matter when you get to college, or really do matter if you go work in a lab, are somehow addressed.
That's great. And I'll just add to that, if I can share one sort of conceptual framework for thinking about this, I want to offer, sorry for the pixelated image. If you're familiar with Next Gen Science Standards, there are sort of 3 parts to this framework. Now, let me just start by saying I am not suggesting that we should be starting with standards. In fact, it's quite the opposite of what we're hoping for here. That's one of the reasons we want to bring together educators who nerd out over their discipline, as well as industry experts, as well as academics, like groups who have who are engaging with these disciplines in different ways and are bringing a multicultural, anti-racist lens to the work. So we are not saying start with standards, but there's something I think special and cool about the way that Next Gen Science Standards are organized, which is they have, instead of conflating all these different types of knowing and doing into single standards, they've meaningfully teased those apart, right? Where you have sets of practices. What do scientists do? What do engineers do? What are the practices of those disciplines? They have things like questioning and analyzing data, for example. Of course, those are transferable. It doesn't just happen in science, right? But it is essential to the discipline. And so it's important that that's been called out, but it's great that it's been called out in a way that's not conflated with disciplinary content. You can work on those practices in different contexts. So there's power in decoupling. They've also named a set of cross-cutting concepts, for example, understanding structure and function, right? That's a critical concept for the sciences. Is it only important for the sciences? Absolutely not. We're talking about structure and function right now, right? Why is the blueprint of school the way that it is? So obviously it has use and purpose in other contexts, but it's important to call it out for the disciplines. And then third, core ideas, right? The factual knowledge that's important for schema building and essential for expertise in the discipline. This is a helpful framework, and we want to use this to help people understand the goal. For us, we would like folks to come with their excitement and deep expertise to focus on, in particular, the sort of core concepts of the discipline. What are the big ideas and questions that that you believe are really essential, really, really important? And then around core ideas, this is where we're very excited for really diverse representation, diverse folks with diverse identities coming to the table to weigh in. If you're familiar with the construct of curriculum as both a window and a mirror, or culturally sustaining pedagogies, right? Different communities will have different ideas about what the important sort of core knowledge is, what the core disciplinary ideas are. And so, we're excited to have folks weigh in there, and we'll very much think about this and from a both and perspective, right? There's no one right way. And there may be lots of bodies of knowledge that get pulled into this. So again, we're thinking about core concepts, and we're thinking about the sort of core ideas, recognizing that folks from different perspectives will have different ideas about this. We are not asking folks to think about practices in particular. And then once we've got this, and our hope is that we'll be able to really, one of the ways this will be distinct from standards is that it will really be a distillation of the core ideas and core concepts of the discipline, really distilling what's essential. And then from there, we'll be able to look across, right? Here are what these disciplinary experts have said are essential to the disciplines. And that is where I believe we'll get to see some exciting examples of truly, transdisciplinary concepts, perhaps. And so I think starting here is going to get us to a set of concepts and big ideas that I believe ultimately will probably have, many interdisciplinary connections. So thank you for that great question. And okay, what else do we have here? Let me get back off of this slide. Thank you, Nikki. Yes, totally. We want to move beyond just recall, right? We want to get kids in the work of thinking deeply about problems in the world, issues in the world, and engaging in meaningful investigative learning and conceptual learning. How will the folks for Project 1 and 2 work together? Will the curriculum mapping and project designers be working together to drive the grouping and organization of the content? Thank you for this great question. We are imagining that there may be folks participating in the first exercise, the design studio, who may be also participating in the Designers in Residence program, but not necessarily. Our hope is that we have at least a draft, right? Something that we can share with the world. And in our planning, this week we've been talking about ways to sort of open up the work that people do, maybe through Google Docs and sort of asynchronous feedback windows, ways to get a lot of people involved and weighing in. But we imagine that we'll, have a working draft that, disciplinary experts will help shape, and that the Designers in Residence, again, some folks may be in both programs, that the Designers in Residence will sort of trailblaze in sorting out how to design these really exciting, as I said, investigative, conceptual learning experiences or investigations, as Antonia said, that draw upon the map. And that will be sort of the design challenge of the summer. And I do want to name that part of the summer commitment that we want to honor through compensation is learning some of the methodologies that we've been developing and using, as Antonia mentioned, for years now, refining in our practice to support a sort of coherent design of these projects. Is the roadmap driven by ever deepening skill or discipline specific content? Is the roadmap driven? Shannon, maybe if you could elaborate a little further, or yeah, that would be helpful. Antonia, how can elementary expertise be utilized?
Oh, great. Thank you for, I'm not watching the chat. I'm looking at the Q&A, so I'm missing some.
Okay, no worries.
But that one, so we desperately need elementary school teachers. We know that elementary school teachers tend to be asked to know across many content areas. What we'd like to ask is that elementary school teachers choose one or two disciplines that they feel they have particularly deep knowledge in for that age group, and to join one or two of those teams in order to offer that. You have a unique way of understanding developmentally where young people are and what what's the amount of content and concepts and ideas that makes sense. And you already know what some of the gaps are in what's available to young people. So that's the hope, is that we're still, for the content map, we're still organized around content and ideas and concepts, less, factual little bits. We're not that interested in little bits of factual knowledge that can be Googled in 5 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
We want to understand the concepts behind those things.
Mm-hmm.
So not the what year was the War of 1812, but rather like, how the heck did this thing come to be?
Mm-hmm.
And what causes war? And so we're moving away from the idea that we should be memorizing a lot of stuff.
Yeah, and I think that speaks to your question, Shannon, about, if there's this list of events, places, names you need to know. That's who gets to decide that, right? Who has decided that historically? That's what we want to push on. And as Antonia mentioned, we're really excited to have folks focus first on sort of major concepts, right? Conflict, power, identity. And then from there, I think it is important to invite folks from different cultural backgrounds, from different identities, to say, these are the stories of history that we do believe are really important for us, right? So that will be an important piece of work. And part of the power we believe, or we're hoping in this experience, again, is bringing diverse folks together to help weigh in and shape sort of a new articulation of what's most important for young people to learn and engage with. And hopefully by distilling down to the essentials, we leave a lot more flexibility for truly student-led inquiry and more choice in their learning, more interest-driven, passion-driven learning.
I want to try and address a few different questions that are popping up in the Q&A that are related. Great. So Mary Julia, you have a question about SEL or equity standards. Ashley, you're asking about competency-based algebra, and Tracy asking about the engineering design process and something interdisciplinary. And Sid, I'm wondering if you want to talk a little bit about our competency set and how we think about these things.
Great. I'll just quickly share that I'm sure there will be conversations about skills, practices, competencies by the experts who are coming together to shape this content map. reDesign has been working for a number of years now to support competency framework design across lots of different contexts. And we're in the process of sort of constructing a transferable set of competencies that tie to our learner-centered community framework. And we're going to make that open source. We're going to put that out into the world. And we believe by design, it will attend to these sort of transferable skills that we're talking about. So I think our hope, our picture, is that we'll have sort of a set of transferable competencies that describe sort of the pre-K to professional learning continuum. Anyone could pick those up and adapt them, and hopefully with partnerships, we'll be able to empirically test and refine those in more robust ways as part of this grant. And then, sets of disciplinary and interdisciplinary concepts that we'll be able to sort of design learning experiences that bring those two things together. But no, we're not expecting folks to design competencies as part of this. We're really, again, it's one of the reasons for the Next Gen framework as an example. We're kind of setting the practices aside. We believe in those and we see those as central. We're looking for a real focus on sort of concepts and core ideas.
I want to also name, like in a few minutes, we'll start talking about the Designers in Residence program and your questions around that. And some of the questions that have come up here actually will fit very well there. So we are making a distinction in our minds around a content map, which would replace the idea of a scope and sequence.
That's right.
We wouldn't, and we want to really push up against the idea of sequence as well as scope. So, scope would address things like, why do high school kids still have to do a year of British literature in this world? Like, that is the weirdest thing. I mean, in England, that makes sense to me. They should do multiple years, but in the US, that's a very strange idea. And there's in many, many places, no other literature besides US and British. So that's one thing we will push up against is like, what really, we got to open this up. We need to really think about, the world has changed so dramatically, and we need to think about the broadness of ideas and knowledge and concepts. And we want to start mapping that. The second piece is like, what do you do with that once you have it? And that's when you develop projects and learning experiences and explorations and all the different ways you bring that to life, which will be multidisciplinary and will take a lens of critical consciousness or anti-racism. And so that is what happens. That will be the Designers in Residence program. And that's when you actually like embed competencies, think about the ways to develop social and emotional strengths in young people and all of those things. So we see those as tightly linked, but not the same.
Great. Someone has asked, there are so many ways in which discrimination occurs. Why the focus on anti-racist projects? Thank you so much for that question. The first thing I want to say is we are talking about, we've used the word inclusion and multicultural. So we're attending to other forms of bias and discrimination that exist in the world. And there's something uniquely awful about how race has shaped the design of our education system and all of our institutions in, at least I'll speak, in the United States, although that is not only true in the United States. And so if we don't name it and we don't get explicit about it and we don't get really curious and intentional about how it's showing up, and in particular, how a white supremacy ideology has completely shaped our institutions and continues to make race the greatest predictor of outcomes for people, from health and education and housing and wealth building. We're missing it. We'll miss it. So we have to name the big thing. And I believe as we address that, we'll also have the opportunity to address all the other isms that we're committed to addressing. So thanks for that great question.
I would also say that we're using the word anti-racist a lot in this conversation, but when reDesign talks about what we see as the centerpieces of a learner-centered community, we talk about critical consciousness, connection to community, and competency. And so What we're really trying to develop for young people is a way to look critically at the world in which race is central because we have racialized our world, but all these other things as well, and all the different ways that, that the world is working upon and on us.
Awesome. All right, so let's take this opportunity to switch gears a little bit. We've spent a good amount of time on questions around the K-12 Content Map. We hope you're as excited as we are. I want to shift us now to our Designers in Residence program, which is kicking off this summer. And I will bring us back real quickly to our big ideas here. So again, we're hoping for 50 designers in residence with experience with 22-year-olds. We will have a kickoff in June with some intensive learning. I believe it's 55 hours of synchronous learning experiences, learning and design between July 11th and August 4th. Time commitment varies. You can learn more if you head to our website. And the stipend for that commitment is $6,000. And as Antonia said, there's the hope on our part that folks will want to engage in sort of a partnership in this work and continue to build and produce things beyond the summer that can help reshape the curriculum landscape around meaningful, investigative, competency-based learning experiences that, again, are grounded in an inclusive, multicultural, and yes, anti-racist perspective. So let's go to, let's talk a little bit about this, or let's hear your questions, I should say, about this this program. What questions do you have? What do you want to know more about? Yes, Nikki, thanks for your question. Nikki's asking, is it okay to apply for both opportunities? 100%, we invite you to apply to both and would be, thrilled to have you submit your application.
So do you want to jump maybe to, with the subgroup of the 50? Yes, we will, Liza. So the 50 designers in residence will have lots of different ways that they collaborate with each other, sometimes to co-create projects as desired, sometimes to check in with people who have different expertise and make sure that how a project is evolving is actually in line with sort of how other people think about the discipline. Giving feedback circles. We're going to do a lot of feedback. The goal is really to create amazing high quality stuff that can be made publicly available. And so we're looking for the best we can possibly all create. And that takes, multiple people, lots of eyes, lots of feedback, lots of revision.
Cool. Antonia, do you see this question from Shannon in the chat? Cool.
So Shannon, that's a really great question. And I think maybe we can show you some prototypes. We do have a slide that shows a couple of prototypes. I think essentially what you've used in your own schools and classrooms would need to be adapted so much that for the prototypes we're developing and hoping to put out, that I don't think there would be a conflict around ownership, because it will not, I don't think your district will look at stuff or your school and say, that's ours. And in terms of your ownership, you will own what you create. reDesign will not own your work. And we're not paying you to create something for us. But what we're hoping is you will make it available in the marketplace, and we will share the profits of that, so that half the profits go to continuing the project, and half the project profits go to you as an individual. So you would get on enduring revenue from it. The more people who buy it, the more revenue you receive. but it would also allow the project to continue and for more things to be developed.
Oh yeah,
You
Shannon,
can
for
always,
sure. Yeah,
oh
yeah.
we will never own your work. We don't believe in that. You're not selling anything to us. That is part of our big commitment around equity, is that everybody needs to be able to lift themselves onto a platform and to be compensated rightly for their work. So we are not going to own anything, but we do hope we can put it in the marketplace.
Awesome. Antonia, okay, the application process is robust. Will decisions be made based on these submissions, or will there be interviews, performance tasks, etc. as a follow-up?
This is it, and it's why it's robust. You'll submit, we need enough to know kind of who you are. We tried to keep it as narrow as possible. We didn't want people to spend 42 hours on this. We will not be asking you to do interviews or anything beyond this. But we also really wanted you to be able to submit enough that we could not get lost in biases, or in making assumptions about you and your work. So.
Great. Thanks for that, Kristen. I'm so excited that this is exciting to you. Looks like Laureen's taking care of your next question. Christine, you're asking, are the content mapping and designers in residence programs only happening this summer, meaning that it won't be done next summer? I'm so glad you asked. Antonia, do you want to respond?
Go right ahead, Sid.
Okay, well, the answer is no, they will not only be happening this summer, and these are just sort of the 2 inaugural programs of reDesign's new collab, or collaborative learning and design space. And so we are very excited to continue to ramp up learning and design opportunities through the collab. And in particular, we are planning next summer to launch a full residency program, which will be very similar to the Designers in Residence program, but a multi-year opportunity. Alongside multi-year opportunities, we are going to be offering, virtual learning series, individual opportunities. Like last night, I ran a workshop through the collab called Disrupt the Rubric. So we're going to continue to ramp up those opportunities to engage with educators. But in short, we will continue with similar programs to the Designers in Residence in the next summer. And with the content mapping, yes, this is just an initial set of disciplines. We picked 25. We wanted to go big to get started. We're going to learn a lot through this first stage, or first run through, I should say. And we do intend to learn from this first experience and then move into other disciplines as well. So if you don't see a discipline that's your area of expertise listed, just know that this is just the beginning of this work, and we will be excited to expand upon it and share other opportunities through the collab.
So maybe we can talk for a second about what it is that we'll be creating. So if you look, you'll receive this deck in a follow-up email after this session is over, and you'll be able to look. Each of these are linked, so you'll be able to look in depth. The one I want to point to specifically is the one with the pretty tiles, the green and magenta and orange tiles, sorry. And this is the heart of the design work this summer, and you do not need to know how to create all these little tiles. We're going to create things in spreadsheets and then have designers make it pretty. But what you can see maybe here is in the center, there's a big question and it's about climate. And then all these tiles that are around gives learners an opportunity to dip into various pieces of learning around climate change. They're at different reading levels. Some of them are videos, some of them are graphs and charts, some of them are cartoons, some of them are games. There's lots and lots of different ways to access this content about climate change, and it's all organized around big questions. So we would be looking for pieces in the content map that relate to climate change. It could be a short story, it could be a novel, it could be a movie, it could be any number of things. We're going to get to the core concepts and ideas related to climate change, and it can be across multiple age groups. So we're not talking about grade levels here. We're talking about 12 to 22-year-olds. Now, we might end up with two slightly different maps, one that's more kind of middle schooly and one that's more later high schooly, but the goal here is not to link stuff to a grade level, but more to provide a pretty broad way to access material. And there was a question here about ELLs, and there's also special education learners who've been kind of ripped off in their education and are reading far below grade level. If you have a map, if you have a design like this, you can include content that will work for learners who are new to English. You can include content for learners who might be in 10th grade but are reading at a 5th grade level. We're not going to tie this to a particular, so this is where we're pushing up against the sequence in scope and sequence, right? This climate change does not have to be taught in an environmental studies elective at the end of your senior year. It can be explored in all these different ways across many different age levels. And so that's what the designers and residents are going to start building these boards and finding this content and figuring out what the big, best questions are to ask and creating learning activities around this, some of which kids can do totally on their own, others of which learners will need to work with an adult, potentially either in a school or an after-school program or wherever. So that is going to be a big piece of the work of the summer, is to really take the content map and make it this cool interdisciplinary, big question oriented exploration for young people.
Melanie, does that answer your question? If you have any specific follow-ups, happy to take those. Great. Great. Awesome. Are there any preferred provider lists of content publishers? Are we free to draw from any all content in our design? Shannon, you're getting into it. I love it. Do you want to take that one, Antonia?
I think you should, because I think you're going to remember what you've all said better than I did.
I don't think we've established a list of preferred providers, but I know that we've been, designing curriculum for many years, and there are certainly resources that we, lean more heavily toward in our designs. And this is a great question, and this is good food for thought for us to consider whether or not that's something we might want to move forward with. But right now, that is TBD.
Yeah, we have to obviously pay attention to free use ownership. What we can't take a whole book and post it in a project. So we need to follow kind of copyright rules around all those things. But other than that, our idea is to open things up, not to close things down.
That's right.
So
that's right.
We want as much of a broad range of material and resources. We want young people, we want to believe that young people can handle and process and work with a broad range if given the right support. And so open is the name of the day.
That's great. And in the example here, how dangerous is our changing climate to our planet, this exploration board, and we have multiple other prototypes of these exploration boards. All of these resources are open source stuff that that are available online, and it includes, a variety of formats of learning resources, websites, articles, texts, digital games, labs, math challenges, etc., that are all built around this central question. And yes, thank you so much for your question about asynchronous and also in-person whole group. So the design here, and it's, we'll be able to dig more into this when over the summer, but the idea here is that we are building really adaptable resources that can be used in asynchronous and virtual learning environments, and that also can be used in sort of in-person learning environments as well. And we're huge believers in excellent scaffolding for learners that makes the underlying structure of inquiry, for example, visible to learners, or the learning process and how you develop competency and how you build deep knowledge, making those things transparent to learners. And that's a big part of the design, and also decoupling things that don't need to be stuck together, so that there's flexibility in which competency am I working on as I'm exploring this topic, which performance task do I believe as a learner is most exciting to me and relevant to the learning I want to do. There's also a continuum of sort of choice and flexibility for learners and how they engage with these learning resources. And so adaptability and customization is really important.
Jillian, great question. Yes. So what we envision here is.
Can you state the question for folks?
I'm
not sure everyone can see
So
it.
the question is, the board is really straightforward. It can be understood by all stakeholders, but are there going to be teacher notes? Is there some way to support teacher notes so that teachers have a sense of how to intersect with this? And the answer to that is yes. We are planning to develop two things. One is kind of a general teacher guide of practices that will work kind of virtual, in-person, hybrid, that really get at some of the key pedagogical practices that most of us were never taught in school. So working with independent learning strategies, figuring out how to do conferencing. Many of us do conferencing now, hard-won, self-taught knowledge, and other practices that are critical for really pulling off this kind of learning and scaffolding it well for young people. And then, so that's going to be a general guide that will be available and accessible. And then each one of these boards will have a specific one that that sort of helps teachers think through the content and the various activities. So it might say, for one, if it's climate change, there might be 4 labs embedded in this in some way. And it might say to a teacher, like, here's some things to think about with the lab. And if you have a remote situation, here are the supplies young people would need to pick up at the school and bring home in order to do it. If you're doing more async, this would be a place where you tell students not to do this activity. You're going to bring people all together to try it. So there'll be those kinds of notes to help teachers get a sense of, like, where do I fit in with this map? Like, I don't want to just send my students off to do it all by themselves. We need collaboration, we need partnership, we need to do things together and build community. So there'll be those 2 different guides to support teachers.
We're open to resources, models, and ideas that you can suggest for the work. To be transparent, we do have, as I mentioned, sort of frameworks and concepts in mind and things that we've been working on for a number of years. But our work is always evolving, and yeah, so we're open certainly to the designers in residence coming in with great resources and ideas and helping shape the work in that way. Yeah, most welcome. Antonia, Sharuta is asking, oh, I think someone got it already. Cool. Do you see for personal finance content and topics within any of the 25 content area disciplines? Personal finance.
So, and correct me if I'm wrong, this is not an.
Um,
I'm sorry.
but I can take a note of that. Oh, that's okay. We lost you, Antonia, for a
I
second.
know I got disconnected. Are we still talking about the finance?
Ashley,
financial?
yeah, I can't remember if that's
So I can tell you my thoughts about this. Unfortunately, because
great.
I just got booted off, I can't see any of the questions anymore. They're all deleted, but somebody's got them. So if there's something unanswered, but correct me if I'm wrong, financial literacy is not my area of strength in any way. But my understanding, my belief, I think is, or my understanding is that a lot of the concepts of financial literacy are taught in kind of foundations of math, like percent, compound, how you would do something like compound interest, how you would keep a check, all the addition, subtraction, all the things that actually go into financial literacy, where financial literacy can live. So we don't have a discipline for that because for myself, I see it as part of math. However, where it can live as financial literacy could be in content boards, right? So in these projects, in these ways that we can design projects that ask big questions about what's happening to the economy, or what's happening to the interest rates in the housing market, or how do we keep our bank, how do we do our personal finances? All those things could become projects that young people apply their foundational math skills to. I don't know if I've answered your question because I can't see the Q&A, but if I did, great. And if I didn't, yeah, throw another question at us. All right. We're right at 5.
Yes.
If there's any lingering questions, we can stay on a little bit and answer them, or you can throw them into the Q&A or the chat, and we can keep track of them and respond in the FAQ on the website.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone. So glad to hear this was helpful and that you're excited, Charuta. Oh, Jillian, you're speaking my language, an alternative to grading. Yeah, grading is for the birds, really. Yeah, this whole initiative is about centering learners, their whole selves, and learning in our education models. And so, yes, this is about knowing where students are, meeting them where they are, and nurturing their sense of agency, their competency, their connectedness, and their critical consciousness as humans in the world. Very, very much so about supporting progress and learning. And we are excited through our lab school, which it'll be a little while before we launch that, but excited to model learner-centered communities through that work. Thank you so much, everyone. All right, awesome. Have a wonderful weekend, and please reach out if you have additional questions, and we hope y'all will we'll see your applications soon.
Thank
and
you
please
again.
help us spread the word. We would love your help
Spread the
getting the word
word.
out. Thank you so much. Yeah, take care.
All right.
Right.
Yes, we will post a recording probably on the website, and also when we send a follow-up email to you just to thank you for attending, we'll send the recording and the deck.
Thank you, Shara. All right, great. I don't have the controls for recording. Antonia, do you? We can probably go